I'm 44 and male. My wife Grace is 42, female, fictitious names for obvious reasons. The same goes for throwaway accounts. We've been married for 13 years, together for 16. A quick backstory. I met Grace around the time I received a medical discharge from the military. I met her while I was in the hospital undergoing surgery. She was a nurse on the floor where I was staying. I am a single mom who has been divorced for a few years. I left the military, returned to school, and now work remotely as a software engineer, more or less. We began dating, and I took it slowly for the first few years because her daughter Maya was 5 years old at the time. Grace is still a nurse, and Maya attends college. Until last month, I thought our marriage was solid. We've had arguments, I admit. I was bad at housekeeping when we first moved in together because I wasn't used to how much kids messed up the house. But aside from that, it was good. There are no step-parent issues. I played an active role in Maya's life because her father works overseas. We went on dates. Intimacy has always been excellent. We wanted children, but it was not in the cards for us. To be honest, I was taken by surprise. I've had friends who were caught off guard by divorce. But I never understood how they were usually problems that they ignored, and then their wives would suddenly leave them, and they had no idea what was coming. But the rest of us saw it coming from a mile away. So here I am, saying the same thing, and perhaps I just missed something important. Grace has been experiencing higher levels of stress in recent months. She's been burnt out since COVID, and I've asked her several times if she'd like to leave her job for a couple of years. I thought the burnout was peaking. She was withdrawn and angry. She stated, "I have to be constantly," and she mocked me for everything. But she is my wife. The pandemic had left her traumatized, and Maya and I understood we would be fine with just my salary. So, I sat her down last month and suggested that she quit and take some time off to recover. Then, everything exploded. She began yelling at me, claiming she knew what I was doing. She has known for months, she said, and she has proof. I had no idea what she was talking about at first, but it didn't take long before I realized she was accusing me of infidelity. I cannot lie. I was furious as hell. I opened my phone and handed it to her, telling her to go through it. I went to get my laptop, unlocked it, and instructed her to go through everything. The entire time, she's still shouting at me about another woman. I do not have traditional social media accounts. I am on Lobster, Hacker News, and I have an account. I instructed her to check everything. There is no secret Facebook, Instagram, or whatever. There are no messages from anyone. I opened Discord and Slack. I tried everything I could think of, but she refused to look at it. She only got angrier and angrier. She then picked up my laptop and threw it. That's when I said, "Enough," and left. I went to my parents' house. Grace was texting, calling, and leaving increasingly erratic messages about the woman she knew I was with when I went to my parents' house. I called their number and told her I needed a few days because I was too angry to talk to her. My sister called the next morning and said Grace had called her several times to see if I was still there. After a few days, I called Grace to speak, and at first, the conversation was productive. She apologized for throwing the laptop, but claimed I made her angry because I was so calm. I told her I wasn't calm because I'd been accused of cheating on my wife and was furious, but it was either to try to talk it out or start shouting, which I thought was a bad idea. Then she became angry, told me I was twisting her words, and everything fell apart quickly. She began going on and on again. She knew I was cheating. She had proof. I asked her what proof, because I wanted to see it. I'm not sure how we got there, but she said she was going to send everything to the lawyer, and I said, "Okay, send a copy to mine," because this was going nowhere. She became very quiet after that and asked if I was serious, and I said I was not going to stay in a marriage where my wife believes I cheated on her but refuses to tell me why. We ended the call there, and I've been at my parents' house since. But that's on my end. My mother believes Grace is simply going through a difficult time and that we can work through it together. My sister is upset that she was dragged into it, so she believes we are both aliens. Maya is unhappy because she is torn between me and her mother. Perhaps I acted too quickly and should have remained calmer. Edit. My morning meetings are finally over, and I need to focus on the job, so I'll be logging out for the day. I'm going to talk to my mother and see if she will talk to Grace, suggest therapy, couples therapy, and so on. I believe those of you who suggested missing reasons were correct. Something is causing this. I'm just not sure if it's because I've caused stress in her life, or if it's pure projection. I don't believe it is, but you never know until you're mine. And that she has a place here regardless of what I consider her. My daughter, of course, she has a place here if she ever needs it. However, given that she is her mother, I will not put any pressure on her, and I know this is pulling her in two directions. Second edit. Okay, so I took a quick break and intended to return and read a couple of comments. But there are far too many to read. However, there is a general theme to them, which I'll try to address quickly from here. Someone asked if I was cheating. I understand why you're asking. I never said it in the post, but I can assure you that I am not cheating. I never have. Granted, those are just words, and I am sure some will believe I am lying. But I love my wife. I've never wanted to cheat. I'm not a saint. People have always drawn me in. I think Sahayak is stunning, but the idea of cheating has never crossed my mind. A lot of people believe she is cheating on me again. I do not think so. She returns home every night around the same time. She does not hide her devices. It could be someone from work, yes? Do I think she is cheating? No. But as many have pointed out, those are famous final words. Maintaining composure while discussing divorce. I have PTSD. I've spent a lot of time in therapy over the years to work through intense emotions. It's why I stay calm. Not because I am, but because otherwise I become overwhelmed. The comment about talking to my lawyer was one of those moments that I struggled to process because of what has happened in the last month. I do not think it is a good idea to divorce her after more than a decade together. On the other hand, I am aware of this because it is not a psychologically safe environment for me. I will stay with my parents until we can resolve this. Could it be hormonal? Yes, it could. However, my wife is already taking hormones as a result of a medical procedure she underwent in her early 30s. As I previously stated, having children was out of the question. She needs to see the doctor every 6 months to check her levels. Her last appointment occurred in March. However, her mood swings began before that. Mental health concerns are what I think it is. As previously stated, Grace has been on the verge of burnout for quite some time. These mood shifts began a while ago, which is why I mentioned taking time off from work. It's also why I brought it up again last month after she yelled at me. I believe this is due to stress. This is why I haven't contacted a lawyer because I hope to save my marriage. I think I just needed reassurance from a neutral third party because I'm completely out of my depth here. To those who argue that I don't involve my mother already is involved. She and Grace are extremely close. She calls Grace every day to check on her. Grace has no contact with her own family, so I'm not really involving Mom but rather asking her to recommend marriage counseling to her the next time she calls. I absolutely do not want to involve another party in this, so I will not contact a friend to speak with my wife. I have had no contact with my wife since I left. Probably should have clarified that. She messages me sometimes. It's the silly things we've always discussed, like random memes she discovered or what her coworkers are up to. Sometimes she begs me to tell her the truth. I'm mentally exhausted from all of this, and I've already suggested it a few times, but it hasn't worked. Hopefully, bringing it up will help. Why throw away because my coworkers also have accounts, and I do not want them to see this post. They might. But hopefully, a software guy in his 40s with a nursing wife is generic enough for American audiences to not recognize me. However, if it is on my actual account, they will. Nobody at work knows, and I'd prefer to keep it that way. However, I believe that is all I have to add. Please do not disparage my wife. I'm upset about this because my wife is a wonderful woman. She's smart, funny, and sweet. She has been a wonderful mother, which is why I have been worried about her for the past few months. This is completely out of character. Added more information from the AP. Well, yes, I'd love to tell you why she thinks I'm cheating, but she won't say whether it's because I spend too much time on my computer or because I use my phone. I'm not sure if this is weird or if I'm taking phone calls at odd hours. She will not explain why she believes I am cheating, and that's the worst of it. I could at least determine what I might need to change. Maybe I'm not into it enough, or maybe I haven't scheduled enough dates. Maybe she thinks I'm too distant, but I'm not sure, and I want to know. I adore my wife. I have loved my wife since our second date. I knew I wanted to marry her after the first month. This isn't an argument about me not doing the dishes correctly or her watching the rest of fall the houses of Usher without me. She's accusing me of cheating on her, but she won't explain why, and I can't fix something I don't know. And because I'm not sure, you're not sure if you can track down my wife and get her side of the story, please pass it along to me. I'd also like to hear her side of the story. Now, for some relevant comments, they will focus on getting therapy for both himself and his wife. I'd be happy with any type of therapy. I've had to do it on and off for years, but she refuses because she believes it's pointless. I'll suggest it, but I'm not holding out much hope. I'm thinking that because she's hesitant to see a therapist, she should consult her primary care physician first. She's been showing signs of burnout for a while. As a result, depression, exhaustion, and irritability are common. Personally, I believe this is a stress-related issue. Someone in the AUD audience suggests that blanket accusations are usually made because they are investigating her cheating, particularly if she is at fault. The AP responds, I don't think she is cheating, but you're right, it could be projection. She has never accused me of this before. This is brand new. That's why it was so surprising that she'd been doing this for years. I think you'd be correct. This is why I'm having so much trouble with the situation. None of this makes sense. European wonders if his wife is likely to receive strange text messages from someone else, accusing him of cheating on her. This is something he's never considered, so he'll definitely look into it. Thank you. I had no idea this was a thing, but it would explain why she has yet to show me the proof because she's waiting for it. A quick update, 5 days later. I don't have the patience or energy to return to Am I the Abuser? So I'll just do it from here, a quick, dirty update. No, my wife does not cheat on me. As far as I know, she is not sick, does not have a tumor, or showing signs of early dementia. If she were, those things would be easier to comprehend. Perhaps it is perimenopause or menopause. I do not know. I do not care. Yes, I will seek a divorce. No, I won't go into it further. I have already spoken with a lawyer. Maya currently lives with me and my parents. I'll be looking to rent an apartment or condo soon. I feel like I have overstayed my welcome. I was thinking about taking some time off to visit her father. I do not blame her. I'm in a mess right now. I'm not sure why I logged back into this account, other than to say that my wife wasn't cheating on me. I honestly wish she were. It would be so much simpler than this crap. Thank you for your advice and concern. Here, you are living a relatively boring life as a software engineer, and you are accused of cheating. You know what they say, whoever smells that dealt it. It's a well-known strategy. Accuse your partner of cheating to conceal your own actions. As she throws laptops and shouts, she has some mysterious proof that she refuses to share. It could be a sign that she is trying to deflect attention away from her own actions, perhaps attempting to keep you guessing and away from the real story. I do not know what to do. August 7th, 2024. 3 days later. I apologize if this is not the appropriate community, but a friend suggested it, and I thought it might be a good place to vent or get advice or something. I'm not sure what information is necessary or relevant, so I'll just write it all down. I can think of something. I've been married to Grace for 13 years. We have been together for 16 years. When we first met, she said she was feeling down. She has no contact with her family. There was some obvious drama involved. As someone with PTSD, I understood that she might not be ready to share it. Plus, my family adored her, so I was delighted to share. After a while of dating, just before I proposed, she told me more about her family. Grace comes from a deeply fundamentalist Christian family. I know the umbrella thing was a big deal, as was marrying young and a lot of other really bad stuff. She married a family friend's son at the age of 16. He was 19. She was fortunate in a way because her ex-husband relocated her across the state and away from her family, allowing her to complete school and begin college. From what I can tell, he wanted out of the cult. She had their daughter, Maya, when she was 21, and he was finishing his final year of school. When he finished school, he went to graduate school in Europe, while she returned home to her family. They got divorced shortly after. Following the divorce, her family attempted to marry Grace off to a man who was more than twice her age, which was her cue to finally get out. Based on what little she would tell me, it wasn't an easy exit. There was a lot of violence involved, and she suspected an attempted kidnapping by the older man. However, she eventually made it out. She took her daughter, moved in with a distant aunt, and cut off contact with the majority of her family. Several years later, she met me, and the rest is history. Until this year, my wife has been very snappy over the last few months. Anger is withdrawn abruptly. She's a nurse, and I initially assumed she was burned out. She was working days at a time with no breaks during the pandemic, and the trauma of nonstop cold cases was finally taking its toll. I suggested several times that she take some time off. The last time I suggested it, she reacted angrily and accused me of cheating. The fight was intense. She said she had proof, which I wanted to see. She took my laptop, and I left. We had another fight over the phone later, and she threatened to send proof of my infidelity to a lawyer. I said, pass it on to Mike. Following that, we mostly communicated via text, with her sending me work updates or silly memes. She would occasionally beg me to tell the truth about the cheating, but I had no idea what she was talking about. For the past few weeks, I've been waiting to see what proof she had that she could talk to me. There are quite a few memes here and there. Anything. I've been living with my parents, and it has been extremely stressful. I thought I'd never find out what was going on until a few days ago when she showed up at my parents' house to talk. Finally, she revealed the proof of my cheating. A coworker had informed my wife that she had seen me with another much younger woman. So, okay, I can handle it. I asked some follow-up questions. How did she look? Where was this? Etc. I quickly realized she's talking about Maya. We occasionally go to the hospital for lunch with her and her coworker, who must have seen us together. A simple mistake, right? Except that my wife was aware that her coworker was describing Maya and was implying that I was cheating on her with the child I had helped raise and calls me dad. I tried not to be angry because I knew she had a lot of trauma from older men dating younger women, especially after what her parents tried to force her to do. However, I felt disgusted and betrayed. She would never expect me to do that, and the conversation turned into another argument. During the argument, she acknowledged that it wasn't just any coworker. Her coworker was Sheila, her first cousin, and Sheila is still in church. It all begins with her admitting that she has been hanging out with Sheila during her free time. She's been calling and talking to her father, who attempted to marry her off to a man older than I am right now. She's been attending church meetings again, while I thought she was at work. And you know what? None of the church stuff would be an issue if she wanted to be a Christian, whatever, except that everything she says contradicts itself. First, it is clear that I am in my prime years for having children. I'm 44, I'm past my prime for children, but I'm overjoyed to have her living at home. However, I'm also happy she can clean her own bathroom because my father is a secular Jew. He's evil, and it's passed down to me. My mother is more evil because she was Christian. She never wanted her family to be Catholic. I'm not sure she's ever even been to a mass, but Mom turned her back on the church and didn't raise me Christian, which is evil. My mom, a woman who loves my wife probably more than she loves me, is now a sinner and deceitful according to my wife. But more than all of that, the part that makes me sick is that Tim pushed me to actually call a lawyer. It was that she suggested our daughter, a brilliant, amazing kid who loves her mom so much, is to blame because she's young and flaunting herself. It's all jumbled up in my brain. There was so much more she went on for what felt like hours before I asked her to leave. I wasn't a good provider because she had to work. I know I reminded her that I was suggesting she take time off from work, but evidently, that was proof that I was just trying to isolate her from her family. There were so many effing tangents and conspiracies, like suggesting she get therapy, which I've been doing since before the pandemic, but especially after the pandemic was me trying to brainwash her to be okay with me having an affair with Maya. I don't understand any of it. I don't know where to go from here. I don't even know how to even start. That evening, out of my life, Maya called crying because her mom was saying really awful crap to her. So, I told Maya to come stay with my parents and that just added flames to the fire. So now, Grace thinks we're living together. I called the lawyer, and I think my marriage is over, and I don't know what to do. I don't know where the fundamental crap starts and where the conspiracy ends, and what I'm even supposed to do to fix things. I don't know that I can fix things. I don't even know how I miss things falling apart to this extent. Okay, the irony. She's slipping out of our supposedly cheating while she's been reintroducing herself to her old church community. All the while, the real kicker is that she's blaming her own daughter for her issues. Either way, It sounds like the therapy she needs might come in the form of a long, hard look in the mirror and a hefty dose of reality. In the meantime, it's wise to get your legal ducks in a row and keep the focus on protecting yourself and Maya. If Grace's narrative keeps getting more bizarre, it might be time to just sit back and watch the show unfold. At least you can enjoy the spectacle from a safe distance, preferably with a lawyer and a clear plan for your next steps. Sounds like she's got a lot to work through. I'm a bit drunk. Be patient with me. August 11th, 2024, 1 week later. I saw my wife earlier today. I wanted to sit down and start talking about what divorce was going to look like between us. We have over a decade of our finances, our home, and our lives intermingled. I've been paying for my school. It's our job that we get most of our insurance coverage from. I put the down payment on her house, but she's paid off just as much as I have. We'll have lawyers do all of this, but at the same time, I just wanted to look at her and make her see what she was doing. The divorce isn't just a word. It's a real, concrete thing. The lives that we have been living are over, as we know it. We're not old. It's not like we can't move on from this, but at the same time, I've been her husband for so long. I don't know who I am without her. When I got home, I started drinking and haven't stopped all evening, which is effing stupid. Do not do what I did. I simply couldn't stop. I kept seeing her sitting across from me, refusing to look at me. I don't know her anymore, and am not sure if I ever did. Did my therapist discuss masking, right? Because of my PTSD, ADHD, and other issues, I ask a lot of questions of coworkers, clients, and others, but I never kept a mask at home. And now I'm wondering if the entire marriage, which she pretended to be happy with me, was actually miserable. Did you choose me because I was stable and a good father figure for Maya? I am not ugly. I'm not attractive either. Our sex life was enjoyable, but was it? Was she just doing it because she learned all that crap as a child? Did she have to please her husband? I feel ill. I feel like I abused her because I'm not sure how much of it was her fault and how much was due to the programming she received at that effing church. Maya, Christ, Maya isn't great. She tries so hard to be tough and strong, but she's my baby girl. I taught her how to fish, and she's much better than I am. She taught me to knit when I was having trouble at work during the pandemic and dealing with the lockdown. She's such a wonderful child, and she's in pain which makes me angry at Grace. I hate her for hurting her child, but I also love her, and that hurts. I'm not sure what the point of this was. I returned to read the theories about cheating on me in menopause. I believed what we had was fixable. I thought if I worked hard enough, we'd be able to change things, and now it's over. It is so effing final. Let that be a lesson. Sometimes, crap just ends, and there's nothing we can do about it. Let's get some feedback from the community. You and Maya will make it through this, and she will need you more than ever now. I was hoping this was just a silly misunderstanding. Keep Maya away from this cult if possible. Best of luck to both of you, and please take care of yourself. Maybe get some counseling. This would be a significant transition if it were a simple divorce, and it is far from simple. Love doesn't always fit into the neat boxes we try to put it in, and the finality of it all can be like a punch in the gut. So take this as a harsh lesson in the unpredictable nature of life. Okay, I apologize that it had to be this way, but Grace, you did it. It's completely unfair, but you and Maya will face this new reality together, hopefully with a little more clarity and much less alcohol. Whatever you do, Grace is not your responsibility. She made her choice. She has to confront some serious demons, and there isn't much you can do about it now except rebuild what's left and find some semblance of calm. Hang in there, and maybe cut back on the alcohol for a while. There's a whole world outside your front door, just waiting for you to reconnect with it. Here is the next story. I've always believed that a man's strength is his integrity and dedication. I teach history at Brookshire High. I, Vincent Stevens, took pride in these qualities. My students respected me, my coworkers admired me, and my marriage to Beverly appeared solid, or so I thought. It was a crisp autumn evening when my world began to unravel. I decided to return home early from a teacher's conference, hoping to surprise Beverly and reignite the spark that had been fading recently. As I approached our house, I saw Beverly's car in the driveway. Good, she's at home, I thought. However, as I reached for my keys, I heard voices from inside. Beverly's rich, carefree laugh echoed through the partially open window, one I hadn't heard in years. "Oh, Morris, you are terrible," she giggled. I froze. Morris, as in Maurice Bowman, my school's new principal. "Come on, Bev," a male voice responded smoothly and confidently. "You know you enjoy it when I'm bad." My heart pounded as I approached the window, straining to hear. "You're right, I do," Beverly purred. It's incredibly refreshing following years of Vincent's predictability. The word struck me like a physical blow. Predictable. Is this how she saw me? How did she see us? "Darling," Maurice explained, "I want to keep things exciting. Speaking of which, when can we meet again? I can't wait to get my hands on you properly." I staggered back from the window, my mind reeling. This cannot be happening. Not Beverly, not with him. I returned to my car. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. Where to go? What should you do, Clarence? The thought of my oldest friend, a non-nonsense bartender who had seen the dark side of many relationships, cut through the confusion in my mind. The drive to Clarence's bar was a blur. I pushed through the heavy wooden door, the familiar aroma of stale beer and peanuts hitting me like a punch in the gut. Clarence looked up from wiping down the bar, his usual gruff expression softening as he noticed my appearance. "Jesus, Vinny, you look like hell. What happened?" I slumped onto a bar stool, the words pouring out in a torrent. Beverly, Morris, the overheard conversation that shattered my world. When I finally fell silent, Clarence poured 2 generous shots of whiskey and slid one toward me. "Here, drink this, then we'll talk." The alcohol burned a fiery path down my throat, anchoring me in the present. Clarence leaned forward, his voice low and serious. "All right, Vinny, first things first. You've got to play this smartly. Don't simply explode. You must determine what this means for you and how you intend to deal with it." I nodded, numb, the shock fading into a cold, creeping anger. "You're correct. I need to know more. How long has it been going on? How deep does it go?" "Vinny, be careful," Clarence warned. "Once you start down this path, there's no turning back. Are you sure you want to know everything?" I returned his gaze, my resolve hardening. "I am sure. I need to know the truth, Clarence. All of it." He nodded slowly. "All right then, but you keep your head. Do you hear me? Do not do anything stupid. And if you require assistance, you know where to find me." As I drove home, my thoughts raced with possibilities. For the time being, I'd agreed to play along, watch, wait, and when the time came, I'd present Beverly with irrefutable evidence of her betrayal. Over the next few weeks, I became a silent observer in my own life. Every interaction with Beverly felt like a performance, a carefully choreographed dance in which I played the oblivious, trusting husband. I paid close attention to her, picking up on details I hadn't noticed before. The late nights at work, the constant texting, and the renewed interest in her appearance. Each observation revealed another crack in the foundation of our marriage. At school, I enlisted the assistance of Janice, a fellow teacher and longtime friend. When I confided in her, her face turned pale. "Vincent," she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I had my suspicions about Beverly and Morris, but I never imagined it would go this far. Why didn't I say anything sooner?" I put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It is not your fault, Janice. They duped a lot of people, but now that we know the truth, we plan to take action." Janice's eyes hardened. "Damn right we are. What do you need from me?" "Eyes and ears," I replied. "Help me keep track of them at school. The more information we have, the better our chances. When we finally confront them," she nodded firmly, "consider it finished. They won't know what's coming next." I approached Neil Malum, our resident technical expert. I found him in the computer lab, tinkering with the motherboard. "Neil," I replied, closing the door behind me, "I need your assistance with something sensitive." He looked up and pushed his glasses up his nose. "What's up, Vincent?" I took a deep breath. "I need to access some emails and text messages. It's important." Neil's eyebrows rose. "That is not exactly legal. What is this about?" I gave him a condensed version of what happened. As I spoke, his expression hardened. "Jesus," he muttered as I finished. "Maurice and Beverly? That's not right, man." He was quiet for a moment before nodding decisively. Okay, I'm in, but we do it smartly. Yeah, no half measures. Agreed, I said. Relief washed over me. We gather evidence and build our case. Then we take them down. Neil cracked his knuckles, and a grin spread across his face. Let's get to work. Oh, Vincent, don't just hit them, destroy them. What we found over the next few days made my blood boil. I received emails mocking my teaching style, my interest in history, text messages planning romantic rendezvous, punctuated with cruel jabs at my expense. And worst of all, evidence of their plan to force me into early retirement, painting me as inept and unstable. One evening, I resolved to put their deception to the test. Beverly had given a flimsy excuse about a work dinner. I waited precisely 15 minutes after she left, my heart pounding with a mix of dread and excitement. The restaurant was on the outskirts of town, a quaint little establishment known for its romantic atmosphere. I parked discreetly away, my hands slightly shaking as I turned off the engine. Through the large front windows, I could see them. Beverly and Maurice had spent time together at a candlelit table. The intimacy of their posture, Beverly laughing at something Maurice said while resting her hand on his arm, was like a knife twisting in my stomach. I took out my phone, keeping my fingers steady as I pressed record. Let them try to deny it, I thought as I watched them eat dessert and Maurice reach across the table to tuck a strand of hair behind Beverly's ear. Something changed inside me then. The hurt and betrayal remained, but something colder and harder had grown alongside them, a determination to succeed, rather than just survive. The tension in our home had become palpable, pulsing in the silences between Beverly and me. I knew it was time to confront her, lay my cards on the table, and see how she would respond. One evening, following a particularly tense dinner, I decided to make my move. How was your day, honey? I asked casually. Is there anything exciting happening at school? Beverly looked up, a tired expression in her eyes. Oh, it's the same old thing. Despite this, I paused to carefully observe her reaction. Morris shared some intriguing plans for the upcoming semester. He appears to be causing quite a stir. Beverly's fork clattered on her plate. Oh, that is nice. He appears to have a lot of new ideas. I was non-committal. Change can be beneficial, I suppose. However, I sometimes wonder if he fully understands the value of experience and loyalty. Her eyes flickered, and a sense of unease crept into her expression. I am sure he does, Vincent. After all, you've been at school for a long time. Your perspective is valuable. I smiled, but the expression did not reach my eyes. Of course, this is my perspective, Bev. What are your thoughts on all of these changes? You seem to be spending a lot of time with Morris these days, planning committees and such. Beverly's cheeks flushed. Yes, he does value my input. Is this a problem? I answered calmly. Not at all. I'm glad you're so committed to your work. It's admirable, really. The tension in the room was palpable. Beverly mumbled something about needing to make a phone call before practically fleeing the table. I waited until I heard her voice low and urgent from our bedroom. Then I quietly made my way upstairs, positioning myself just outside the door. Morris, we need to be more careful, Beverly was saying. Something I believe Vincent is starting to suspect something. There was a pause, then, no, absolutely not. He's too caught up in his books to figure it out. But maybe we should take a break for a while. Another pause. This time the duration is longer. I understand, and you are correct. We have come too far to back out now. The plan to force him into early retirement remains on track. Please be patient, okay? We'll get together soon enough. I had heard enough. I pushed open the door, watching Beverly's face lose color. Vincent, she gasped and nearly dropped her phone. I could explain, she stammered, her tone deceptively calm. Can you explain why my wife is collaborating with another man to advance my career, to destroy my life? Beverly's surprise quickly turned to anger. Were you spying on me? How dare you? I laughed, a harsh and bitter sound. How dare I? That's impressive, coming from you. I know everything, Beverly, the affair, the plot to force me out of my job. Did you really believe I wouldn't find out? Her eyes narrowed. Fine. Do you want the truth? Yes, I'm having an affair with Maurice. And you know what? He's twice the man you'll ever become. The words stung, but I refused to show how badly they hurt. Is this so? She spat. Maurice is confident and ambitious. He recognizes my potential and appreciates me. When is the last time you made me feel alive, Vincent? When was the last time you were unpredictable? Boring Vincent Stevens, you're forever stuck in the past with your dusty history books. I shook my head. Disgust welled up within me. So there it is. Beverly is finally showing her true colors. Tell me, was any of this real? Our marriage? Our lives together? She deflated slightly. A flicker of something, regret, guilt, washed over her face. It happened once, but people change, Vincent. I have outgrown you. Maurice and I, we have plans, big plans. Plans that exclude a small-town history teacher who is content with mediocrity. I see. I spoke, my voice eerily calm. Allow me to remove myself from your grand plans, Beverly. I will be staying with Clarence for a few days. When I return, I expect you to be gone. Beverly's eyes widened with shock. What? You cannot just... I cut her off. I can, and will. This home is in my name. Do you want a new life with Maurice? Go build it elsewhere. I turned to leave, but Beverly's voice interrupted me. Vincent, please wait. Please, we can work it out. I'll go to counseling. I will do whatever it takes. When I looked back at her, I saw a stranger, a manipulator rather than the woman I had loved for years. Save it, Beverly, I said. I am done with the lies. I am finished with the manipulation. It is over. As I walked out of the house, I felt a strange calm wash over me. The confrontation had gone differently than I had expected, but one thing was obvious. There was no turning back now. I drove to Clarence's bar, my mind already racing with the next steps. This wasn't only about my marriage anymore. It was about my career and reputation. My whole life. Beverly and Maurice had made their move. Now it was my turn. Clarence glanced at me and nodded as I entered the bar. It's finished, I confirmed. But this is only the beginning, Clarence. They want war. I'll give them something they won't forget. Clarence placed a hand on my shoulder, his eyes gleaming with determination. We are with you, Vinny, every step along the way. Come on, let's plan our next move. As we sat down to strategize, I felt a fire ignite within me. Vincent Stevens, who had left for the teachers' conference weeks before, was no longer present. In his place stood a man who had nothing to lose but everything to gain. Beverly and Maurice had no idea what was waiting for them. The morning after my confrontation with Beverly, I arrived at school early, my mind racing with possibilities. I needed allies, people I could rely on to help me uncover Maurice and Beverly's betrayal. I discovered Janice in the teacher's lounge, grading papers with a furrowed brow. She looked up as I entered, her face softening with concern. Vincent, she said, setting down her red pen, how are you holding up? I took a deep breath and sat across from her. I'm doing okay, Janice. I need your help. We're going to take them down, but we have to be strategic about it. Janice's eyes widened in surprise before narrowing in determination. As I explained my initial thoughts, after I finished, she reached out and squeezed my hand. Those bastards, she hissed. What do you need me to do? I advised, keep an eye on them. Any interactions? Are there any whispered conversations? I need to know everything. She nodded firmly. Consider it finished. We will bring them down, Vincent. I promise. As the day progressed, I looked up Neil McCallum again. I found him in the computer lab, his fingers flying across a keyboard. Neil, I replied, closing the door behind me. Got a minute? We need to discuss strategy. He looked up and pushed his glasses up his nose. Sure. What is the plan? I outlined my ideas, emphasizing the importance of discretion and strong evidence. Neil's expression darkened as we spoke. This is more than just an affair, isn't it? He asked when I was finished. I nodded. Much larger, they're attempting to destroy my career. Neil, we need to stay one step ahead, I said. Neil cracked his knuckles with a determined look in his eye. All right, I am all in, but Vincent, we have to be careful. Some of what we're doing is in a legal gray area. We need to cover our tracks. Agreed, I said, relief washing over me. We do it smartly. We do this correctly. Throughout the next few days, our unlikely team worked tirelessly. Janice kept me up to date on Morris and Beverly's school activities while Neil dug deep into their digital lives. We always took care to leave no trace of our investigations. What we found made my blood boil. Emails describing their plan to undermine me, text messages mocking my teaching style and my passion for history, and worst of all, evidence of their attempt to force me into early retirement by painting me as inept and unstable. They're not simply having an affair, I growled at Clarence one night in the bar. They've been actively trying to destroy my career my entire life. Clarence's expression darkened as he poured me another drink. Then we make certain they fail, Vinny, and make them pay for even attempting. As we planned our next move, an unexpected ally appeared. Larry Limu, a brilliant but troubled student who had previously encountered Morris's authoritarian style, approached me after class one day. "Mr. Stevens," he said, looking around to ensure that we were alone. "I heard a few rumors about you and Principal Bowman. Is it true that he is trying to get you fired?" I studied Larry's expression, weighing my options, eventually nodded. "Larry, it's complicated, but there is a situation." Larry's eyes glowed with a mix of rage and excitement. "I want to help. Maurice is a tyrant. He nearly expelled me last year for questioning his policies. I have skills that could be useful." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of skills?" He leaned in closer and lowered his voice. "Let's just say I'm familiar with firewalls and encrypted servers. If you need dirt on Maurice, I can provide it." Every instinct told me to turn this off, to keep a student out of the mess, but another part of me, hardened by betrayal, saw the possibilities. "Larry," I carefully explained, "what you are suggesting is not only against school rules, it could be illegal. I cannot ask you to do that." Larry's expression became serious. "You aren't asking, Mr. Stevens. I am offering. Maurice needs to be stopped, and if I can assist with that, I want in." I paused for a long moment before nodding. "All right. However, we proceed cautiously. You don't take unnecessary risks, and when I tell you to stop, you do got it." "I get it," Larry agreed with a fierce grin on his face. "Let's take him down as a team." We began developing a comprehensive plan. Neil and Larry worked to collect digital evidence. They are always careful to cover their tracks. Janice and I paid close attention to Maurice and Beverly's movements at school, doting on any suspicious interactions as evidence accumulated. I realized we needed to broaden our focus. This wasn't only about me anymore. Morris's abuse of power extended to other employees and to the students. We needed to expose everything. One evening, I gathered my allies to discuss what we had discovered. Neil's expression was grim as he described the extent of Morris's wrongdoing. "He hasn't just been inappropriate with your wife," Neil said, his voice tight with rage. "There is evidence that he exploited other female staff members, using his position as principal to pressure them into relationships." Janice gasped, bringing her hand to her mouth. "Oh my God. I knew he was sleazy, but this?" I felt a cold fury settle in my chest. "This changes everything. It's not all about me anymore. For the sake of everyone, we must put an end to his actions." Clarence nodded. His face hardened and agreed. "So, Vinny, what's the play? How do we bring this jerk down?" I thought for a moment before smiling. "We use his own tactics against him. Begin spreading rumors, plant seeds of doubt among the employees. When the time comes, we'll lay out all of the evidence for everyone to see." Larry leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "I have an idea for that part. The school assembly is next week. What if we hijacked it?" As Larry explained his plan, I felt a surge of satisfaction. It was risky, but it might work. Maurice and Beverly believed they could destroy me. They had no idea what was coming. "All right," I said, looking around at my teammates, "let us get to work. It's time to put an end to this." The day of the school assembly arrived, and I felt a strange calm wash over me. Months of planning, gathering evidence, and forming alliances had led to this point. Today, Maurice Bowman would fall. As I entered the auditorium, I straightened my tie and nodded at colleagues and students. To anyone watching, I was just another teacher attending a routine school event. They had no idea the storm was on its way. Principal Maurice took the stage with his usual smug confidence on full display. "Good morning, everyone," he began. "We're here today to celebrate some fantastic academic achievements." I tuned out his self-congratulatory speech, my eyes scanning the crowd. Janice caught my gaze from across the room and gave a slight nod. Neil's station was near the AV booth. I gave a quick thumbs up. Everything was in place. As Maurice droned on, I felt a tap on the shoulder. I turned to find Larry, his eyes bright with nervous excitement. "Mr. Stevens," he whispered, "it's all set. Simply say the word." I nodded and squeezed his shoulder. "Larry, you did a good job. Now return to your seat. Things are about to become interesting." Maurice finished his speech and turned to me with a patronizing smile. "Now let us hear from Mr. Vincent Stevens, one of our most experienced teachers." The pause before "experienced" was subtle, but I noticed it. One final dig, one final attempt to portray me as outdated and irrelevant. I smiled inwardly, wishing he knew. I took the stage, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. "Thank you, Principal Bowman," I said with a steady voice. "I'd like to speak with you all today about the importance of integrity in education." A wave of confusion swept through the audience. This was not the speech they expected. "You see," I continued, "the school is more than just a place to learn. It is a community based on trust and mutual respect among teachers, students, and administrators. But what happens if the trust is broken? What happens when people in positions of power abuse their authority?" The room had become deathly quiet. I could almost feel Morris's glare burning into me. "I am not speaking in hypotheticals," I said, my voice becoming stronger. "I'm referring to actual abuses occurring right here in our school." Suddenly, she stood up. "He's correct," she called out. "I've seen it myself, manipulation, inappropriate behavior." Another teacher, Josephine from the counseling department, got to her feet. "So have I," she said. "I've had students come to me, afraid to speak up." Maurice jumped to his feet, his face red with rage. "What is the significance of this, Stevens? You're out of line." I ignored him, turning instead to Neil. The lights dimmed, and the projector screen behind me flickered to life. Email, text messages, and transcripts of conversations began to scroll across the screen. Morris's words in black and white, detailing his affairs, his plans to undermine me, his inappropriate behavior towards female staff members. The auditorium erupted in shocked whispers. I saw Maurice, his face drain of color as he recognized his own words. "This is slander," he shouted, trying to regain control. "Fabricated evidence. Stevens has clearly lost his mind." But the evidence kept coming. Larry stepped forward, his voice shaking slightly but growing stronger as he spoke. "It's not fabricated," he said. "I helped uncover it, and I can testify to Principal Bowman's abuses of power. He tried to expel me last year for questioning his policies. He rules through intimidation and fear." Morris lunged for the stage, his eyes wild. "You little brat. I'll have you expelled for this." I stepped between them, my voice calm. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Morris. Not unless you want an assault charge added to your growing list of problems." The room had descended into chaos. Teachers were shouting questions, students were recording everything on their phones. Through it all, Maurice stood frozen, watching as his carefully constructed world crumbled around him. I turned back to the audience, raising my hands for quiet. "I know this is a lot to take in," I said, "but every piece of evidence you've seen has been verified. We've already submitted it all to the school board and the authorities. Mr. Bowman's reign of abuse ends today." As if on cue, 2 police officers entered the auditorium. Morris's eyes darted wildly, looking for an escape route, but there was nowhere to run. "Maurice Bowman," one of the officers said, "we need you to come with us for questioning." As they led Maurice away, I caught sight of Beverly in the crowd. Her face was a mask of shock and horror. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and I saw the realization dawn on her. She had hitched her wagon to a sinking ship, and now she was going down with it. The aftermath of the assembly was a whirlwind of activity. Police interviews, meetings with the school board, reporters clamoring for statements. Through it all, I maintained a calm exterior, even as satisfaction burned within me. It was late evening when I finally returned home, exhausted but triumphant. I wasn't surprised to find Beverly waiting for me, her face a storm of emotions. "How could you?" she hissed as I entered. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I hung up my coat, regarding her coolly. "I think I have a good idea. I exposed the truth, something you appear to have a problem with." Beverly's laughter was borderline hysterical. "The truth? You have destroyed everything. Morris's career, my reputation. God, Vincent, what were your thoughts?" "I was thinking about justice," I responded, my voice harsh. "For myself, Maurice harassed other teachers in the name of the students he bullied. What did you conveniently forget about all of that while defending your lover?" She flinched at the word lover, but soon recovered. "This is entirely your fault. If you had not been so boring, very predictable, none of this would have occurred." I laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Is this the best you can do, Beverly? Blame me for your choices and betrayal?" "It was not like that," she protested weakly. "Maurice, he made me feel alive. I appreciate it. Something you haven't done in years, which justifies destroying my career," I countered, attempting to force me into early retirement while mocking everything I stand for. Beverly's face wrinkled. "I never intended for it to go this far. It simply spiraled out of control." I shook my head, disgust welling up within me. "Save your excuses, Beverly. I am not interested." "What will happen now?" she inquired, her voice small. "Now you have to live with the consequences of your decisions," I echoed. "I did not destroy Maurice, Beverly. He did it himself. You chose him, and now you get to share in his downfall." Tears welled in her eyes. "Vince, please, we have history. So many years together. Doesn't that count for something?" For a brief moment, I felt a sense of pity, almost. But then I remembered every cruel word and betrayal, and my heart hardened. "Our past," I replied coldly. "You threw that away when you decided to cheat. It is over, Beverly." "I wanted a divorce," she gasped, as if she hadn't expected this. "You cannot be serious, Vincent. We can work it out. I'll go to counseling. I will do whatever it takes." I held up a hand to silence her. "Please, save it. I am done, Beverly. I'm done with the lies. I am finished with the manipulation. I recommend you start packing. I need you out of this house by the end of the week." As I turned to leave, Beverly called out one more time. "Where shall I go? What should I do?" I paused at the door and looked back at her. "That isn't my problem anymore. You made your decision, Beverly. Now deal with it." I walked away, leaving her sobbing in the living room. The sound did not move me. I was tired of being manipulated by her tears. The next morning I awoke to a flurry of text messages came in, but the most urgent message was from Clarence. "Vinny, get down to the bar ASAP. I have important news to share with you." I put on some clothes and drove to Clarence's pub. The clothes optional sign was still up, but when I tried the door, it opened. Clarence was behind the bar. "You aren't going to believe this," he said. "Vinnie Morris left town last night." "What?" "I'm stunned," I replied. "How do you know?" He slid the newspaper across the bar. The headline screamed, "Disgraced principal flees amid scandal." "Coward," I muttered while skimming the article. "Any ideas where he went?" Clarence shook his head. "Nobody knows, but that is not all. The school board has launched a full investigation. They're discussing pressing charges." I nodded, a sense of satisfaction settling over me. "Good, let him run. It will only make him appear guiltier." I left the bar, feeling a sense of closure wash over me. Maurice was gone. His reputation was in tatters. Beverly's attempts at damage control had failed spectacularly, and me? I was still standing, stronger than ever. After several weeks, Brookshire's sense of normality returned. I'd settled into a new routine, concentrating on my teaching while rebuilding my life. But I knew better than to drop my guard completely. One evening, as I graded papers in my living room, a sharp knock on the door broke the silence. I didn't need to look to see who it was. "Come in, Maurice," I said, my voice steady. "I've been expecting you." The door flew open, and Maurice stormed inside, his expression contorted with rage. "You," he snarled. I stood slowly and kept my voice calm. I did not ruin anything, Maurice. You did it entirely on your own. He lunged forward and grabbed my shirt. Don't give me that sanctimonious BS. You hacked my email. You turned everybody against me. I did not flinch. I told the truth. Your email, your actions, you abused your power, Maurice. It was all you, he exclaimed, spittle flying from his lips. I had every right, I argued. Maurice, you were causing harm to other people. Not only me but other teachers, students. It had to stop. Morris's grip tightened. I will make you pay for this, Stevens. I will destroy you if it is the last thing I do. Just then the door reopened. Beverly walked in. Her eyes widened at the sight before her. Maurice, she gasped. What are you doing here? Maurice whirled on her, his rage finding a new outlet. You, he let out a growl. This is entirely your fault. If you hadn't been so obvious, you could have simply shut your mouth. Beverly backed away, her eyes filled with fear rather than shock. Maurice, please. I did not intend for any of this to happen. Shut up. Maurice roared. He released me. We're making progress on Beverly. You are equally responsible for this as he is. Do you think you can simply walk away and claim innocence in all of this? I stepped between them, my voice cold. That is enough, Morris. This is between you and me. Leave her out of this. Maurice laughed bitterly. Oh, you're now protecting her. How noble. Vincent, tell me how it feels to be such a pathetic cuckold. Before I could reply, two more figures entered the room, Clarence and Neil. Is everything okay in here, Vinny? Clarence asked, his gaze never leaving Maurice. Neil held up his phone. We just thought we'd drop by. Oh, and Maurice, you should know you're being recorded. Morris's face turned pale. Did you set this up? I nodded. I knew you'd arrive. Couldn't resist one final confrontation, could you? But you're finished, Morris. It is over. The hell it is. Maurice lunged at me, his fist landing on my jaw. I staggered backward but quickly regained my footing. Years of pent-up rage drove me to retaliate, delivering a solid punch to Morris's stomach. He tipped over, wheezing. You'll regret this, he gasped. I stood over him with a cold voice. No, Morris, the only thing I regret is not recognizing you for who you were sooner. Get out of my house and never come back. Clarence and Neil moved to flank me. Maurice looked at each of us, aware that he was outnumbered and outmaneuvered. This is not over, he spat as he stumbled to the door. Yes, I responded. Goodbye, Maurice. As the door slammed behind him, I turned to face Beverly. She stood trembling, tears streaming down her cheeks. Vincent, she began. I put up my hand, cutting her off. Save it, Beverly. I think it's also time for you to leave. But where shall I go? She inquired, her voice small. That's no longer my problem, I replied. You made your choice. You now have to live with them. Beverly gathered her belongings and left. Neil turned to face me. You okay, Vincent? I nodded, feeling a weight lifted from my chest. Yes, I think I am. Clarence put his hand on my shoulder. You did well, Vinny. Now, let us get you cleaned up. We left the house. I felt a sense of finality. This chapter of my life was truly over, and a new one had begun. In the weeks that followed, life in Brookshire gradually settled into a new rhythm. The news of Morris's arrest and Beverly's fall from grace spread through town, and I found myself the target of much speculation and, surprisingly, admiration. One afternoon, as I walked down Main Street, I overheard an elderly woman conversing with her companion. There goes Vincent Stevens, she said. Can you believe everything he went through? Her friend nodded. And how he handled things, such dignity. Not like that Maurice, who's running away like a coward. I held my head high, acknowledging their nods with a small smile. The community's support was unexpected but comforting. Later that evening, I met Janice, Neil, and Clarence at our usual hangout, Clarence's bar. To Vincent, Clarence replied, raising his glass, the man who took on the system in one go. I chuckled and shook my head. I couldn't have done it without you guys. You were aware of this? Janice squeezed my hand. We're just happy you're okay, Vincent. After everything you've gone through, Neil chimed in. Have you considered what you said at the last support group meeting about assisting others who have been through similar experiences? I nodded slowly. I have. I believe it would be beneficial to use my experience to help others. That is our Vinny, Clarence grinned. We laughed and talked when the door to the bar opened, and Beverly walked in, looking disheveled and uncertain. The room fell silent. Vincent, she said as she approached our table, can we please talk? I exchanged glances with my friends before standing up. 5 minutes, Beverly. That is all. We stepped outside into the cool night air contrasted sharply with the warmth of the bar. What do you want? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Beverly wrung her hands. I wanted to apologize for everything. I know it isn't enough, but I need you to understand how sorry I am. I examined her face, looking for any signs of manipulation, but I couldn't find any. I exhaled. Why now, Beverly? Why after all this time? I asked. I've started going to therapy, she admitted, trying to figure out why I did what I did. I realized I was scared. Vincent, I'm scared of getting old and boring. However, in my attempt to overcome that fear, I transformed into something far worse. I nodded, feeling a twinge of understanding rather than sympathy. Fear can drive us to do terrible things, but this does not excuse them. I understood, she whispered. I knew I could never make things right, but I hoped we could start over as friends. For a moment, I was tempted. The memory of the woman I once loved and the life we shared tugged at my heartstrings. But then I remembered the cruel words, betrayal, and attempts to undermine my career and reputation. No, Beverly, I replied firmly. We cannot be friends. Too much has occurred. I've moved on, and you should do the same. Her face wrinkled, but she nodded. I understand. I just hope you'll forgive me someday. I took a deep breath. Someday, perhaps, but not today. As Beverly walked away, a sense of relief washed over me. I returned to the bar, where my friends sat with concerned expressions. Is everything okay? Janice asked. I smiled, genuine and free. Yeah, it is now. Where were we? As the night progressed, filled with laughter and good company, I came to an important realization. This group of people, this unlikely band of allies, had grown beyond friendship. They were family, and together, we could face anything. Months passed, and life fell into a new rhythm. The day I finalized my divorce felt more like a beginning than an end. As I left the courthouse, Janice greeted me with a supportive smile. How are you feeling? She inquired, as we walked to a nearby cafe. I considered the question for a moment, then replied, lighter, as if I could breathe again. We sat down, and Janice reached across the table to squeeze my hand. I am proud of you, Vincent. You have come so far. I felt a warmth in my chest that was unrelated to the coffee in front of me. I could not have done it without you, without all of you. Janice's smile softened. I never imagined we'd end up where we are now, I finished for her. She nodded, a faint blush on her cheeks. Is it too soon to think about ourselves? I thought about it for a moment. Our attraction had grown subtly but undeniably. Maybe, I admitted, but I believe it's worth investigating. Janice's smile gradually became brighter. Slow, that sounds perfect. Later that week, I met Neil at school. We've been developing a proposal for new policies to protect employees and students from abuse of power. Neil shuffled through some papers and said, the board appears receptive. I believe Morris's scandal woke them up to the need for change. I nodded with a sense of purpose. Good. Nobody should have to go through what we did, or what the other teachers and students did. Neil looked up with a mischievous glint in his eye. You are aware that there is a position for a department head that matches your qualifications, and given everything that has happened, you would be ideal for it. I chuckled and shook my head. Thanks, Neil, but I believe I am ready for a change, actually. I was offered a position at the community college. Neil's eyebrows rose. Really? That is fantastic, Vincent. Will you take it? I believe so, I replied. You know, a fresh start. In addition, I will be teaching a course on ethics and education. It seems fitting, doesn't it? Neil laughed. Poetic justice at its best. We will miss you around here, however. I am not going far, I assured him, grateful for everything he had done. That evening, I found myself in Clarence's bar. The establishment had grown in popularity with both locals and college students frequenting it. Clarence smiled as I took my usual seat. "If it isn't the soon-to-be Professor Stevens," he said, sliding a drink towards me. I raised an eyebrow. "News travels quickly in a small town," Clarence shrugged. "So you're actually doing it, moving on to bigger and better opportunities, hopefully better," I said, "but not necessarily larger." "I like it here, Clarence. This town and these people have become home." Clarence's expression softened. "Well, Vinny, we enjoy having you here. You've become somewhat of a local hero, you know?" I scoffed. "Hardly." "No," Clarence replied seriously. "You did something that few people have the courage to do. You stood up for what was right, regardless of the consequences. This is something to be proud of." I felt a lump forming in my throat. "Thank you, Clarence, for everything. I'm not sure what I would have done without you." He brushed off my gratitude. "For the time being, that is what friendship means. Enough of the sappy stuff. Tell me more about your new job." As we talked and laughed, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. The journey had been difficult, perhaps even painful, but I'd come out stronger, surrounded by genuine friends and new opportunities. The next day, I walked through the halls of Brookshire High for the last time. Memories, both good and bad, were repeated in every classroom and every corner. But as I stepped out into the bright sunlight, I felt neither sadness nor regret. I felt hopeful. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I was prepared to face them. I had survived betrayal, fought against injustice, and emerged victorious. But more than that, I had discovered my own strength, formed unbreakable friendships, and discovered a new purpose. I got into my car, ready to drive to the community college for my first day. I smiled. The future appeared bright for the first time in a long time. I was excited to see what it held.